Hello, this is Captain Chaudhari. In this second session of global warming, what I'm going to discuss is the United Nations and different countries globally. What are they doing in respect of global warming? What are they doing in respect of climatic change? In November 1988, the World Meteorological Organization and UNEP, that is United Nations Environmental Program, they created what is called IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climatic Change. So IPCC came out with their assessment report saying that greenhouse gases are getting concentrated, they are getting enriched to a dangerous proportion. This is because of the human activities. So this is the report which for the first time globally cautioned the scientists, the environmental scientists of the world. Now what we are trying to understand here is globally what action is taken by the global community. So on 21st March 1994, UNFCCC, that is United Nations Framework Convention on Climatic Change, came into force. Now this convention meets every year. So the countries world over, they meet every year and they exchange their views, their suggestions and their undertakings in these conferences. These are called COPs or Conference of Parties. The Kyoto Protocol was adopted on 11th December 1997 and it came into force in February 2005. Now Kyoto Protocol binds the developed countries. It targets the developed countries, puts a heavier burden on them in respect of international responsibility, the global responsibility of curtailing the greenhouse emissions, curtailing the emissions which cause this global warming. And global warming is basically attributed to the human activities, and the developed countries or industrialized nations are more to blame. So there is this common objective with differentiated responsibilities and capabilities. That is what is stated in respect of these developed nations. So Kyoto Protocol puts a binding commitment on 37 industrialized nations, the economies in transit and European unions. So in the Kyoto Protocol, there is this first commitment period from 2008 to 2012. What is this first commitment period? They say that in this period, they want to bring the emission down by 5% compared to 1990 levels. So from 2008 to 2012, what will the world do so that the emission comes down by about 5% from 1990 levels? Now Kyoto Protocol says that primarily the greenhouse gas emission has to be brought down by each country by their own nationalized projects, but they can also be done by market-based projects. So what are these market-based projects? So there are three of these projects. One is joint implementation. What happens is a developed country which has got a higher cost involved in bringing down the greenhouse gas emissions goes to another developed country where probably this cost of bringing down the greenhouse gas emission are less. They set up a project in such country and thereby earn the credits, the carbon credits. These carbon credits are used to meet their emission targets. This is joint implementation. Next one is clean development mechanism. Now clean development mechanism means a developed country will go to a country which is developing, underdeveloped country. They set up a greenhouse gas emission or a reduction project in such country, that is the developing country, and thereby earn the credits, the carbon credits. So these carbon credits are used towards meeting their targets, that is the emission targets. What else can be done? The developing country can have such projects set up in their country and they can take approval from UNFCCC, that is United Nations Framework Convention on Climatic Change, and thereby earn the credits. These credits can be bought by a developed country and thereby meet the emission targets. Now the third method is international emission trading. International emission trading means these carbon credits, they are available in the international market at prevailing market rate. So the developed countries can buy them, and there are other countries which do not have this problem of meeting the targets. So what happens is they can normally be the sellers of these carbon credits, and these developed countries could be the buyers of such carbon credits. These carbon credits are also available, or they can be available in the carbon trading, whereby they can be purchased or sold. So this serves the purpose of both the developed countries as well as the developing countries. Kyoto Protocol has provision for a very rigorous monitoring, review and verification and compliance system, whereby various countries, they are supposed to declare what trading they are doing. They're supposed to keep a record and keep this international organization, an organization which keeps a track of usage of carbon, etc. by different countries. A control is kept on whether the emissions are taking place as per the individual targets, as per the rules of protocol, etc. So United Nations Climate Change Secretariat, which is based at Bonn, keeps a log of these things globally. Kyoto Protocol also facilitates the development and establishment of these projects, which will take care of the consequences of climatic change, the adverse consequences of climatic change, so that the people, the cities, the country is more resistant to the adverse effects of climatic change. Under Kyoto Protocol, there is also provision of adaptation fund. What is this adaptation fund? Adaptation fund is for creating the projects and programs in developing countries in respect of combating the climatic change. Now these adaptation programs need fund. In the first commitment period, the adaptation fund was basically financed by the proceeds from CDM projects. Doha Amendment was in 2012. This happened in Qatar, Doha. The idea of Doha Amendment was to bring about an agreement, the international agreement in respect of climatic change, by 2015, and find the various ways, in which it can be quickly achieved by 2020. So there is a second commitment period from 2013 to 2020. The idea was, like in second commitment period, the emissions are brought to 18% below the 1990 level. Like in the first commitment period, the financing of adaptation projects were from CDM mainly, but in the second commitment period, that is 2013 to 2020, the financing will also be done by international emission trading as well as joint implementation. Like all those countries which were party to the Kyoto Protocol, they would have their responsibilities extended to second commitment period, with certain modified and enhanced responsibilities. Under Doha Amendment, there is an amended and increased list of GHG emission, and the countries have to take a note of it and report these emissions. Then several articles of Kyoto Protocol were required to be updated. They were updated in Doha Amendment. COP21, Conference of Parties 21. This was 21st Conference of Party to 1997 UNFCCC, or it is also called 11th CMP to Kyoto Protocol. This happened in Paris. COP21 was for the first time that the countries world over, they met with a lot of enthusiasm, depending on their past, present and future responsibilities and the common cause which they had to fight. They unleashed their actions and the future responsibilities in respect of climatic change. Paris Agreement is a global agreement whereby 196 nations, when they attended, there was a consensus on this agreement in respect of climatic change, and result was on 22nd April 2016 in New York, 174 nations, they signed this agreement. And the result thereafter was like in their individual countries, the legislation was already in the process of formation. The key result of Paris Agreement was like to have a temperature rise not more than 2 degrees above the pre-industrial level. And the countries, rather than 2 degrees, should pursue a goal of 1.5 degrees. But the scientists said to have a goal of 1.5 degrees, it would be required that there are zero emissions reached somewhere between 2030 and 2050. Paris Agreement also calls for zero anthropogenic greenhouse gas emission by mid-21st century. Now, 148 nations, they presented, NCCs before the conference. NCC means National Climatic Contribution. They are intended nationally determined contributions. What is the outcome of this? The implications are like a curtailment of temperature rise of 2.7 degrees by 2100. It also implies that by 2030 there will be 40% reduction compared to 1990 emission. The Paris Agreement also establishes that the national goal must be amended and enhanced and bettered every 5 years, starting from 2023. COP of 2021 is more commonly referred to as COP26. It was the 26th United Nations Climate Change Conference held at Glasgow, Scotland, UK during the end 2021. Cuts in global greenhouse gas emissions was still far from expected. COP26 did produce new building blocks to advance implementation of Paris Agreement. Through the actions, countries were asked to present stronger national action plans next year instead of waiting till 2025. Mitigation secured near global net zero NDCs from 153 countries and future strengthening of mitigation measures. Several countries are covered by either adaptation, communication or national adaptation plans to increase the preparedness to climate risks. Developed countries were to make progress towards delivering the $100 billion climate finance goal and would reach it by 2023 at the latest. The Glasgow breakthrough was to accelerate collaboration between the governments, businesses and civil society to deliver on climate goals faster. Negotiations were also concluded on an enhanced transparency framework, providing countries to regularly report on progress. Countries agreed to strengthen a network known as Santiago Network that connects vulnerable countries with providers of technical assistance, knowledge, and resources to address climatic risks. Glasgow Dialogue was launched to discuss arrangements for funding of activities to avert, minimize, and address loss and damage associated with the adverse effects of climatic change. 137 countries took a landmark step forward by committing to halt and reverse the forest loss and land degradation by 2030. 103 countries, including 15 major emitters, signed up the Global Methane Pledge, which aims to limit the methane emission by 30% by 2030 compared to 2020 levels. Over 30 countries, 6 major vehicle manufacturers and other entities related to this field, they decided that there will be zero emission vehicles by 2040. Many advanced countries announced a groundbreaking partnership to support South Africa, the world's most carbon-intensive electricity producer, with 8.5 billion over the next 3 to 5 years to make a transition away from the coal to a low carbon economy. So let us work towards a green environment, blue oceans and a healthy globe. We know the reasons. We know the reasons for global warming. Why don't we start acting now? Country will do whatever it has to do, but it is our individual responsibility. So set up your goal in respect of climatic change. Set up your goal in respect of preventing the global warming.